everyone, and welcome to my channel, Learning with GP, where learning is simplified. Today we're going to record our first ever interview session. Yay! I'm really excited for it. We are going to talk about different cybersecurity issues and current ongoing ransomware attacks and malware attacks that have really taken over the news these days. We will have a cybersecurity expert as our guest today, and that is Mr. Akshay Dixit. Akshay is the CTO of Anzentech Private Limited. Akshay has been working as a cybersecurity expert for over a period of 10 years now. And in 2016, he started his own company, Anzentech Private Limited, in the field of cybersecurity. So if you want to know more about the company and its services and all that high-end quality solutions that they offer in affordable prices, go check out the link that I will put in the descriptions below. So he is going to guide us through all these important questions and answers for today's session. So feel free to drop your comments, queries, suggestions, and I will try to get them addressed as well. So with this, without further ado, let's get started. Hi Akshay, and welcome to my channel. It's really great to have you here today.
Hi Gunjan, thanks for having me.
As you are a real expert in this field and also the first person we are interviewing on this channel, it's really going to be exciting. And let's figure out some of those intriguing and mysterious GDPR cybersecurity attack issues.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you the first most important question that I think everybody at this point is struggling with is, what do you think, or how would you help small and medium business owner understand cybersecurity in this current ongoing world?
Okay, so that's actually a really nice question. So if you see, it's from a perspective of a small or a medium scale organization or even a large scale organization, you have to understand the need of cybersecurity or information security in general for these organizations. And it's basically got to do with protecting the data that you have. Since everything is digital these days, so we're talking about protecting all the information. If you're a service provider, if you're a business, you're storing some data that is important and sensitive to you, which is under your own ownership. You're providing a service to your customers, then you have your customer information, you have financial information, you have information about employees. So all of this data is something that you want to protect. And you're essentially storing all of these data, this data on different assets. So these will be your servers, your employee machines, databases, so on and so forth. So essentially what you're trying to do is just protect these assets and this data from getting leaked outside from some hacker or some malicious entity trying to just gain access to the to such an information. So the role of cyber security essentially is prevention against cyber security threats and attacks. Mm-hmm. Then you have information security, which is essentially protection of information. Mm-hmm. And then you have data security, where you are specifically focusing on the security of the data that is lying on these assets. There are different ways and methods to do the same, and that's pretty much how as far as the importance of cybersecurity to these organizations is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. That's really interesting. That the topic of cybersecurity keeps getting interesting and more interesting to us, because recently here in Europe, a Swedish supermarket chain, Coop, they had to shut down 800 of their stores and suffer millions in losses because of a ransomware attack. So what actually would you recommend as preventative measure that they could have taken to kind of combat these attacks, or, address to them in an efficient manner?
Okay, so this attack on Coop and a lot of other entities across Europe and Sweden kind of just happened. And the interesting thing about this is that they were not directly responsible or accountable for the attack that happened. So what really happened was there is an IT firm called as Kaseya, and there is this hacker group called as and what they did was they targeted Kaseya IT firm, and this IT firms provide softwares to so many other organizations, and through uh, compromising Kaseya's networks, they kind of distributed malicious ransomware loaded softwares and updates to the different clients and the organizations that were receiving these softwares from this IT firm. And that's how it propagated. That's how this ransomware kind of got loose. And unfortunately, brands like Coop had to kind of just shut down their stores, all 800 something, as you rightly said, of their stores, to kind of just get back from this attack, right? So essentially it happened to one firm which was giving product or service to these other organizations that got affected through this act. So this is what really happened in terms of the attack. Now, I believe your question was, what can firms and organizations do to protect themselves from such an attack? So, okay, so there are two aspects to this. The first aspect is, what do you do when you get hit by a ransomware attack? So for any type of an attack, let's call it an incident or an attack that happens to you, there are two ways to protect yourself from any type of an attack. There is a proactive approach, and then there is a reactive approach, right? So what happened was that an incident happened, ransomware attack happened. So what you can do now that this incident has happened is you can react to it, right? So as a reactive measure, what you can do is, since a ransomware by itself is a malicious software that encrypts all the files, all the important files on the servers, and then the ransomware creators, they demand certain amount of money to kind of decrypt those softwares for you, those files for you. So essentially, we never suggest to kind of give in to the ransom demand and go ahead and pay, because first of all, you're just you don't even know whether they're going to decrypt your file even after they do get the money. There have been countless cases where people end up spending money paying the ransom and still they do not get the decrypted files. Second of all, it's never advisable to kind of give in to an extortionist. So by that logic, you should never do it. But from your end, what you can do is a good reactive approach is to kind of immediately try to back up your, use the backup of the files or the assets or the servers, the last known stable version of the asset, try to bring it back to its working functionality. That's immediately what any organization would like to do. You have to inform all your customers, you have to inform all your data subjects, whoever entity, regulatory bodies, compliance bodies, that an incident or a breach has happened, and you are taking proactive measures. You have to give them the timelines on what analysis you have done so far, different templates and different ways of communication exist based on the different types of regulatory the regulations that apply to such organizations, right? So there's this legal and compliance and obligatory aspect of it, and then you try to bring back your assets or your business back to its operation. That's immediately what you need to do. Going a little bit technical, since it's a malicious software, so at an organization level, you should perform like an antivirus scan and anti-malware scan, and just ensure that all these assets are now free from such ransomwares, right? So all of this becomes a reactive approach. Now, let's look at the other aspect, which is a proactive approach, right? So what is the lesson learned from such an attack? So how do I make sure such a thing never happens again to me, and how can somebody else make sure that this does not happen to them in the first place, right? So you need to put in the security controls in place. You need to have, first of all, you need to make sure your network is protected, your assets are protected, you have strong security policies in place, you have safeguards like firewalls, intrusion detection prevention systems, you have a good security operations in place, you have the capacity to detect an attack, You have the capacity to, first of all, to monitor your networks and your assets. You have the capacity to detect it when it happens, and you have the capacity to stop it before it causes any harm. So that's like a proactive approach, so that you're yourself ready, and you're making sure something like this doesn't happen to you. Now this is at the level of the IT firm. In our example, in the case that we're talking about, this is specifically about what this IT firm would have done, should have done, or will do, just for this example's sake. Talking about Coop, because this did not originate, Coop was not specifically targeted. This propagated through a firm that was providing a software, and through this, that's how the malware, the ransomware kind of propagated to its infrastructure. So you need to have strong mechanism to kind of understand which service providers, or people call it supplier management, supplier risk management, vendor risk management, third party risk management. So you need to have a good third party risk management in place. So what this essentially means is that if I am an entity, if I'm an organization, and I'm ensuring whoever is providing third party services to me, I'm ensuring that they are secure enough, and the channel, the mode of communication, the way in which they are providing me a service is secure. If they're accessing my assets, is this in a secure fashion? Essentially answering the questions: what would happen if they get compromised? What would happen if something happens at their end? How does it come back to me, and how does it affect me? All these questions are answered and kind of taken care of through third party risk management. So if you have a good third party risk management, you can ensure that you have governance on all the service providers and software providers that you have, and you can ensure that through their channel, even if their channel is compromised, that does not get propagated.
Yeah, that's really interesting to know, because how can you make sure that the third-party organizations that are that you have relied on so heavily can really provide you the services that you need to protect yourself, to protect your assets, to protect your customers? So
Exactly. And a lot of times what happens is we pay so much attention on just protecting ourselves that we kind of do not pay attention on the other people who either we are dependent on, or some way are related to us in terms of helping us run our business, which are a lot of third parties. And so we need to make sure that we have the risks that are arising from our liaison with these third parties, they are also covered.
So one kind of technical question that I got curious about just talking to you, that when this ransomware attack happened, so you said that most of the times the cybersecurity is managed by third-party organizations. So who actually pays the ransom? Is it the organization, or is it your third-party organization, or who is actually in the deep economic trouble at this point?
Organizations engage with third-party cybersecurity providers in different manners. In mostly the team which is responsible for taking care of kind of monitoring all these things is the security operations team in any organization. Now, your security operations team could be completely in-house. It could be completely outsourced to a cybersecurity firm in a managed fashion, or it could be a hybrid where some part of the things are managed by the organization itself, and some parts are kind of managed by the third-party security provider. So in terms of liability, that who is really liable to kind of, and who's accountable, I think that really depends on which entity is kind of handling which part of the operation, and what is the scope or the kind of the arrangement of the work that is divided between the organization and the third party. And all these things are mostly when they do engage with companies, and even my company, my organization, we do it with our clients. So we already have these clauses and these things discussed in as a part of their third party risk management. because I am a third party which is providing a service to them, they would always have this segregation of duties and what happens if something such a breach occurs because of me, right? For example, let's not even talk about the cybersecurity organization. Let's talk about Coop as a client and Kaseya as a provider, right? So it happened through them. So I'm sure they must have some kind of an agreement as to who is liable and what happens to the loss that Coop bears. So we do not know these details because these are some things that are done inside board, between organizations. But yes, I'm sure they must have things in place, and then they'll work it out amongst themselves. And that's how kind of it's a contractual obligation, which is kind of segregated by who does what and who's liable for that. And that kind of just it's a mix of the risk management team and the legal and compliance team that come together to form these compliance and clauses in the contracts that the entities sign. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, really. Thanks a lot. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Because sometimes in these matters, our viewers might not be aware that there is a possibility of having a contract. Even as a small business owner, you could definitely go for a cybersecurity company and assure that you're secure. And in case of ransomware, you're not the one who is actually responsible. You could have these clauses in place.
Definitely. In fact, cybersecurity companies like mine and a lot of other companies, we also help organizations establish like a third-party risk management framework and operationalize it, where we help sit with the legal and compliance team and help them understand the cybersecurity aspects of it, how to formulate the clauses that have the data security points, the data security addendums, how to ensure what checks and balances to put in place so that the third parties that are engaging with you as an organization, they are conscious about the security of their own assets and the resources and the assets they are using to provide you the service or a product or whatever it is. And there are clauses that are in place for them to kind of just take this more seriously, have like a governance on them in terms of managing their risk so that it does not percolate. First of all, it does not emerge in their premise in the first place, and if it does not impact the client or the organization that has done is taking these services from this third party.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you for that brilliant answer, Akshay. Another question that I have for you is in terms of data privacy. So when certain kind of ransom attacks or cyber attacks happen, so how does that impact the data privacy of the customers, the clients that are involved with this institute?
Okay, so usually when we talk about specifically if you're talking about a ransomware attack, what happens is essentially, so in cybersecurity we talk about three things. We say that it's like the three pillars of cybersecurity or information security for that matter is confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. So that essentially means confidentiality means the data should not get leaked. It should only be accessed and accessible to the people who are authorized to access and view the data. Integrity means the data should not be tampered by an unauthorized person. So it should be in its original form, in the way it was meant to be, and it should not be altered in any way by an unauthorized party. And availability essentially means that the data should always be available to the people who are supposed to use the data, right? So these are the three aspects of it. So when we talk about a ransomware attack, by design, a ransomware attack is not supposed to extract or steal any data. It's only, what it does is it essentially encrypts all the files. So you're not able to use the files, and your server fails, your applications fail, and the type of service you try to provide fails. So the confidentiality by definition does not get affected. The availability gets affected because now, and even integrity, nobody is trying to modify any file in any fashion, right? If it's a malware, in the process of encryption, if it is designed to do some alterations, then okay, I will say that some integrity was compromised. It's essentially targeting availability, where they are saying nothing is usable now. Everything is encrypted. If you want to decrypt it, you have to pay the ransom. So it's the availability. Now let's talk about, now let's get back to the data privacy, right? So let's talk about consumers data or customers data or end users data. So let's say there is an organization, a company like Coop, and a ransomware comes inside their infrastructure, and now it has encrypted all these files. So now customer data is not available to them. The data has not been stolen. The data has not been altered. It's just not available. So essentially, if obviously there are so many other aspects to it, because an attack is not that simple, and this is just one case, and we do not know the exact number of steps that took place for this attack to happen. But I'm taking like a very simple example. So what you need to do at this point is, first of all, you need to declare this. You need to tell all your consumers that there is an incident that has happened. Your data, what was compromised? So you need to tell them, okay, data was encrypted, but nothing has been stolen. Nothing has been, so your data is, there was no leakage. Nobody else knows anything about your data. We are in the process of restoring it. We have backups, and in this many number of these the following days or in the following week, we will be able to restore this data, and you will get everything back, right? So essentially, you need to notify them. You need to tell them what happened. And if there was, if during your analysis you did realize that there was a leakage that happened, then you have to declare it, that okay, passwords have been leaked or usernames have been leaked, information has been leaked. We implore you to change the passwords. We are in the process of doing this and that. And you have to assure them that you are taking the safeguards to kind of get services back to normal, protecting their data again, and whatever steps you are doing to ensure that they are safe. And then you have to tell them what they need to do at their end to ensure that they do not get compromised in any other fashion, or their data is not outside or leaked to any malicious entity.
Yeah. I guess that's where the EU GDPR kicks in, and you have to follow those rules and regulations at both ends of the deal. Yeah. All right. So this actually is a really nice thing that you mentioned, because it brings me to my another question. So there has been a lot of big stories this year, and one of the big stories was this airindia-sita data leakage, which led to leakage of over 100 million users' data who might have traveled between the dates of, I think, 26th of August of 2011. So it was like 10 years of data, and February 3, 2021. So is that also a ransomware attack? Was that a malware attack? What exactly happened there? And could you just help us and our viewers understand this?
Okay, so yes, there was, so essentially what happened and what we do know about what happened in this Air India data user, the flyers data compromise, is that Air India itself had a data processor, which is called as CETA PSS, which is your passenger service system. And what they were essentially doing was, whatever the data these people collected over time of their passengers, which is like, you know, their information, their address and their name and their PNR and these informations, and that was being processed by them to kind of use for different types of services and loyalty rewards that they were offering to their flyers. And also they had like this the airlines have this frequent flyer royalty programs and miles. So we do not know, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we do not know yet what really happened in Sita. But what happened was, the data processor got compromised, and not Air India directly. And that's how what happened was, millions of data of these passengers was revealed across 2011 to 2021, and CETA informed Air India about this breach that had happened, and they were investigating it. and then Air India disclosed it to its passengers on its website. Everybody got an email. I believe you must have gotten one as well.
Yeah, I did
About,
actually. Yes.
yeah, as a notification for such a breach that happened. Uh, as the news stands, or as the story goes, they are still investigating it. They have engaged with forensics and cybersecurity companies to kind of analyze, but nothing, no further detail about what actually happened has been divulged as of yet. So we can. I'm just staying tuned, and when we get more information about this, we can definitely. I'll be in a position to tell you more.
Yeah, that would be really nice because I think over 100 million people have been breached. So I think a lot of people are probably suffering from this situation and wondering what is going to happen with their details that they have given to Air India webpage. And also probably wondering because as far as I know, India does not have any similar data protection regulation similar to GDPR in effect at the moment. So how does it translate to passengers who have traveled but are not necessarily of Indian origin? Is there a difference between it, or it really doesn't matter where you come from? Once you visited a web page, you gave your detail, they are all leaked, and now, yeah, you'll be dealt with all in the same manner.
Well, in terms of the people who are affected, it's the passengers. The passengers' data was being processed for their usage, for them to understand, to get more details, and for them to be able to provide their services. So, in terms of the leakage of data, it's the passengers' data that got leaked. So, if you have traveled between that time period through Air India, then most likely the details that Air India records of yours that got leaked. I do not think passwords were leaked in this case, in these scenarios, but yes, some information was leaked. Uh, in terms of regulation, in India right now, we do not have GDPR does not apply to India as a country. Although we do have something that we call as the PDPB, which is India's Personal Data Protection Bill, which is quite similar and as comprehensive and as strict in terms of data privacy um and protection of personal information of the citizens of India. But unfortunately, that is something that has not been passed yet. It's still in draft form and it has been tabled in the parliament. We were hoping for it to get passed into the form of a bill in February this year. Um, but as you know, last year this whole COVID situation happened, and now as a country, almost everybody is kind of focused on getting out of this, and so we can just look out for and hope for this PDPB to get into effect really soon. And as soon as that happens, regulations and laws on protecting the privacy of end users is going to get tighter. Like it's going, like if you remember those GDPR days when GDPR was first introduced in Europe, it was a mess, and it was like hell for organizations because they were not used to kind of carrying out their business and functions, keeping the data privacy of end user in mind. So a lot of organizations had to change everything in the way they did business, in the way they stored data, and something like that might happen. We might in India we might see as well if the PDPB goes ahead and becomes an official bill.
Yeah, that will be really nice. I wish all the best to all the Indian citizens so that they can get the same amount of personal security when using the interwebs as here in EU. As you mentioned COVID, it came to my mind that there were also a couple of Chinese malware attacks, as they say, and which led to a heavy power outage in metropolitan city of Mumbai during these hard-hit COVID times. So it created quite a bit of chaos and panic, actually. And Obviously, India is not the only country who has suffered such kind of attacks from an external entity. I mean, you use the. So what could be the simple steps, or probably not so simple because this is an attack at an international level. So what are the things or the surveillance that cyber security people could keep an eye on or perform? Today there's power outage, tomorrow it could be your water supply, it could be literally anything. So I am curious to know, like, how far can this actually manifest, and how can you do something to actually help yourself out in such a situation?
Well, okay. So just talking about the example or the incident that you brought up. So what happens is, and let's just say that it was alleged, or if hypothetically something like this would have happened, whether or not, to what extent, what happened is not something that's of primary concern of this discussion. It's more to say that essentially how something like this would work is when a power plant actually gets attacked, when there is a malware that kind of gets somehow gets implanted or executed in the infrastructure of a power plant. In that case, then it starts messing with the functionality of the power plant, and that's how you start losing electricity, and you get power outages, right? So that's what was claimed. That's what was claimed, that amidst the border differences that was happening between the two nations, there was a cybersecurity attack that happened on a number of Indian power plants, and that is how these outages happened, right? Now, you have to understand that industrial systems work in a different fashion than your typical IT systems, right? So there are different control, security checks and balances that are put on industrial systems and power plants. They are a lot more protected, especially because they are providing massive sources of energy and power, and kind of just supporting the entire country, or parts of the country. So different security measures are kind of implied over there. It's a little different, but yes, the concept and essentially everything is in some fashion or some way, it's working on a tech. It's working on a technology. It has a software. It has a hardware, and that can be attacked by hackers. So you need to. There are a couple of aspects. First of all, in industrial systems or in government facilities, physical security is really important. So you need to make sure that an authorized person cannot kind of just deliver such a payload directly by going in and just plugging in something. And so the physical security aspect is really important. Obviously, the surveillance, like you said, the monitoring of the system has to be separate. These units, these facilities has to be separate from other entities. There has to be specific monitoring in terms of CCTV surveillance, in terms of biometric protection, uh, uh, in terms of access control, in terms of armed guards, in terms of the softwares that they are using. So in a typical IT system, I may go for just putting a firewall. In this case, I may want to put like a whitelisted list of people or users who can just access and just remove access to others. I'm not saying that this is not happening. I'm saying this is how it usually happens. So the concept here that kind of gets followed is what we call as a defense in depth, where what you're basically doing is you're ensuring all the aspects are covered, as if you have to protect it as your crown jewel, right? So, and that approach might not translate to an IT scenario. So in terms of the government facilities, in terms of the critical infrastructures of any country, as we would like to say, you have separate regulatory bodies that protect it. We have separate government bodies that are meant to kind of just ensure to protect our country against such attacks, and then they're doing a really good job as well. But like it's said, that you need to protect all the windows and doors of your house, and the burglar just needs one entry point, right? So the protector's job is always more difficult than the attackers, right? And it'll happen that there are hundreds and thousands of attacks that, as a country or as a power plant or as a critical infrastructure, you keep facing, and you thwart each and every one of them. But one or two of them kind of just percolates in, and that obviously gains the traction and gains the media attention and the news. And yes, obviously any outage is not a good thing to happen. But yes, I mean, I feel that as a nation, our cyber security posture is really good, and if there is something, we can always learn and we can improve on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I got curious about it. As you said, COVID came to my mind. And also even in Germany, if we look at the stats, the energy sector is really suffering from the cyber attacks because of the fluctuations in the market. Thank you for the really intense answer. At the moment, I think physical security is something that is really, really important at these huge levels of protection.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite, I mean, it's even if we talk about your companies, right, your tech industry or your companies or your organizations, they have to protect it. But it's about the fact that, I mean, you have a whole lot of employees that you have to deal with. Relatively, the sensitivity of the services that you're providing is not as critical as that of a critical infrastructure. I mean, it's in the name. It's a critical infrastructure. Anything gets the name of a critical infrastructure because if that infrastructure gets compromised, it affects the nation. It affects at a national level, right? So that gets addressed as a critical infrastructure, and it's really essential for the country to operate. So, and when we talk about organizations, you still have to put surveillance, you still have to put an armed guard, you still have to protect your data centers, you still have to monitor, you still have to secure, need to have secure locations, you still have to screen your employees, have biometrics in place, have CCTV cameras. Is just the amount of focus on security depends on what type of service you're giving, to which sector you're giving, how does it translate in terms of its consumption. Is it at a corporate level, is it a B2B, is it a B2C, or is it kind of just powering or doing something at a very large national scale?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is all of the questions that I have for you at the moment. Thank you so much, Akshay, for joining us today and addressing all these interesting and burning cybersecurity issues that are happening all over. I mean, every time I open the news these days, all I see is cybersecurity attack, shutdown, malware. So it's really, really interesting, I think, for every person to know and make themselves aware of what exactly are these things. How can you, as a data owner, as a data subject, protect yourself from these attacks? Because you are not far away from it at any point in your life. You are using the internet, you are on your phone, you're taking pictures, you have iCloud account. You should be aware of these things and really, try to educate yourself on these important topics that are going on at this point. So thanks again, Akshay, for joining us on our very first interview. So we hope to see you again soon and discuss more about the CETA issue and probably other upcoming topics.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our first ever interview today. I hope it was a lot of fun for you, as I myself learned a lot about the current ransomware attacks, how they work, what happens, and how can you protect yourself and your business against these attacks. If you have any comments, suggestions, ideas that you would like me to discuss more about, or maybe have another interview or talk about, do let me know in the comments down below. I will make sure to get to it and answer your questions. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give me a like, and hit that share button, share it with your friends whom you think can learn something and are looking to find content like this. I hope to see you very soon with more interesting topics to discuss. So until next time, bye!